Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 5 of The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we talk with enterprise and technology platform leaders about the people, processes, and platforms that make marketing and customer experience successful, scalable, and sustainable. This is what creates an agile brand. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advisor and consultant for Fortune 1000 marketing and CX leaders and teams as principal and chief strategist at GK5A, and best-selling author, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and Agile certified coach. The Agile Brand podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To sign up for the Agile Brand newsletter and get the latest insights and articles on marketing technology and CX, or to purchase a copy of my latest book, House of the Customer, go to gregkihlstrom.com. You can also find all my books on Amazon and other retailers. And now on to the show. Today we're going to talk about the value of qualitative customer data and how to use it well. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Daniel Erickson, founder and CEO at Viable, an AI analytics tool that enables businesses to instantly access and act on valuable insights from customer feedback. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Why don't we get started, though, by you giving a little background on yourself as well as a little bit about what Viable does.
Sure. So I'm Dan Erickson, CEO and founder here at Viable. I started the company about 3 years ago, and we're in the early stages of this whole AI boom. And we help companies understand their customers by aggregating customer feedback from a bunch of different sources, organizing that feedback for them, and then automatically analyzing that feedback as well using AI generative analysis.
Great. Wonderful. Well, yeah, and definitely to your point, lots to talk about AI these days and in a number of areas. So yeah, looking forward to talking about this aspect with you. So we're going to talk about qualitative customer data and how to use these insights most effectively. So let's start with a little background on how qualitative and quantitative data work, both together and separately. How would you characterize the relationship between quantitative and qualitative customer feedback?
Definitely. So first, let's do some definitions here. So quantitative data are things like app usage metrics, actual ratings on the App Store, any sort of like sales pipeline numbers. Basically, if it's a hard number, that's the quantitative stuff. On the qualitative side, it's unstructured feedback. It's things like open-ended survey responses and App Store reviews and social media mentions and help desk tickets and sales call transcripts. So these are all different ways of getting feedback. Generally speaking, quantitative feedback will tell you what your users are doing, but it can't tell you why they're doing it. That's where qualitative feedback comes in. So qualitative feedback can come in and help you understand the why behind the actions that your customers are taking and behind the sort of experiences that they're having and their ratings for those things. So to really sort of characterize these things separately, we've got quantitative data that tells you the what, you've got qualitative that tells you the why. And when you marry those two things together, you can get the full picture of what your customers think about your product or service.
Yeah. And so what are some of the, you mentioned some of the sources of quantitative. What are some of the sources of qualitative feedback, knowing that, again, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but knowing that these can be aggregated and used by your tool. But what are some of the sources that of qualitative feedback that you can pull through or pull from.
Yeah, absolutely. The most common source for qualitative feedback is it might be surprising, but it is help desk tickets. It's your support queue. So your Zendesk, your Intercom, Fronts, Customer, all of these sort of large companies that help you on the help desk side. So we plug into all of those. On top of that, there's things like call transcripts, so Gong or Chorus. There are App Store ratings, so the App Store and the iOS App Store and the Android Play Store, and surveys on top of that. So NPS, CSAT, any sort of PMF, like product market fit surveys you're doing, or any sort of targeted surveys as well. So in-app feedback, reviews on Amazon and Walmart. So basically, all of these places are places that your customers are talking to you or about you. And it really helps to sort of aggregate all of those things into one place so that you can get a bird's eye view of the whole thing.
Yeah. So what are brands often overlooking in terms of utilizing? You mentioned quite a few different types of customer feedback, but what are they overlooking in terms of utilizing this effectively? Not just seeing what their rating is, but really utilizing it to make changes or make improvements or whatnot.
Yeah, so most companies will look at things like what their average rating is on the app stores or what their current NPS score is. But all of those platforms actually also allow customers to write in reviews and explanations for why they gave the rating that they did. And right now, lots of companies use those top line graphs, and they're like, okay, yeah, cool, our NPS is growing, or our app store or our iOS app is dropping in ratings. But it can be really tough for teams to understand why those things are happening. So it's pretty easy to understand what your current sort of customer sentiment looks like overall. But when you're digging in to understand why is my NPS score dropping, or why is my app store rating dropping, it's pretty tough to do that without digging in and reading through every response that you got through those qualitative data channels.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's one of my criticisms of kind of the surveying or over surveying in general is just that is, they're lagging indicators, and the quantitative stuff is really what's required sometimes to do the forensics or, just kind of figure out what's going on. But so you're saying utilizing let's say, it's even sometimes there's a good NPS rating, let's say, but someone puts something critical in it. Can you use all of that information, as long as it's one of those open text fields or whatever, can you use all of that and kind of get a better picture of what may be going right or wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So you might have a really great NPS score overall, and even somebody may even give you like a 9 or something on NPS. But within the comment itself, they'll say things like, "I really loved the onboarding that I had with John, but my experience at checkout was a little buggy." Right, and they might have given you a 9 overall, so it would reflect very positively in the NPS score itself. But there was some extra context there in that comment that got missed. If you're not reading through and reviewing every single one of these, sorting them into multiple different buckets of pain points and features and different personas, then you're not getting the full benefit you get from collecting all of this data. And it's really, really tough to do if you're just humans reading through it. Many companies are spending dozens of hours a week just reading this stuff. And it's maybe not the best use of time if computers can start doing that for us.
Yeah. Well, and along those lines, how do you determine whether it's a human or a machine? But how does a brand determine whether they should accept or reject customer feedback as something to pay attention to? Like what's either, is it a threshold? Is it what is it that really helps a brand determine that they should be paying attention to it?
Yeah. So first off, I would say that you should probably be paying attention to all of the customer feedback that you're getting in. That said, there is some feedback that's a lot more valuable than others, and what that boils down to is actually the persona of the person that is submitting that feedback. So it's all that extra metadata around the person that you should care about. So things like, is this from my free tier or is it from my enterprise tier? Is this in a market that we really care about, or is it in one of the markets that we don't really care about? So it's really defining what that sort of ideal customer profile looks like for you, and then really, really paying attention to the feedback that you get from people who match that profile.
Before we continue, let's take a quick break. If you're like many marketing leaders today, you're inundated with a need to improve the customer experience across an increasing number of channels and touch points, all while ensuring your team is performing well, innovating, and continuously improving. So how do you find the time to determine what's next for you, your team, your brand, and your customers? My company, GK5A, can help. Whether it is advisory services, evaluation of marketing technology platforms and solutions, or digital agencies and implementation partners, or assistance with creating strategic roadmaps and prioritization of efforts, we've done it all and served as an ally to Fortune 1000 brands in industries like financial services, healthcare, consumer electronics, professional services, and more. You can learn more about these services and contact us at www.gk5a. That's www.gk5a.com. Now let's get back to the show. I want to talk a little bit, you touched on this already, but I want to talk a little more specifically about the AI component and how that ties into customer feedback. So your platform, Viable, as you mentioned at the top of the show, utilizes AI, helps analyze customer feedback. Can you talk a little bit about how this works? Because you mentioned several different types of sources that it's coming from. How is this effective, and why do you think that AI is the right fit for this type of work?
Absolutely. So Viable aggregates data from all of those sources that I just listed. We've got native integrations with all of those different platforms, and what it does is it actually pulls in the data in real time as conversations are happening in these platforms. In real time, actually enriches those conversations. So, say you've got a chat that's happening in Intercom. As soon as that chat ends, it gets sent over to Viable. Viable then takes a look at the transcript for that chat and identifies all the different topics that the customer was talking about. So it'll talk about like any bugs they reported, any complaints they have, any feature requests they might have asked for, any compliments they may have given you, the service, or the product itself, and identify all of those different topics within the data set there. Now, it's doing this for every single conversation that your team is having with your customers, and actually every survey response that's coming in, every review that you receive. All of those things are being sort of in real time enriched. Now that we've got sort of all that enriched data in one place, we can then do a periodic report on that entire data set. So our customers basically grab all their data from all those different platforms, pull it in, and then our system goes through and on a weekly basis writes up a AI-generated report for our customers to easily find the top complaints, the top compliments, the top requests, and top questions that their customers have about their service. Yeah. So we do this using GPT-4 and other large language models to really deeply identify the context of the data coming in. We actually have done sort of a head-to-head comparison between us and a manual process, and we generally will come up with about 3 to 5 different topics for these conversations, whereas most humans would sort them into just 1 or 2. So we get a lot more granular in our insights because of that. So we actually are now producing what I would call superhuman reports on this qualitative data sets.
Yeah, so this kind of ties into, I would consider myself relatively an optimist, at least when it comes to technology and AI. And, I think my feelings on it are AI can really augment human teams' ability to do things. It sounds like that's what this is about, is like it's not just you set it and forget it and AI starts running all of this stuff on its own, but it's AI taking vast amounts of information that humans couldn't possibly go through, or if they do, to your point, I don't know if it's bias or if it's just, humans have a hard time just parsing mountains of data, but, AI is able to come up with better recommendations. Do you see this as AI human augmentation? Is that kind of the philosophy behind this?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd firmly believe that humans alone can perform at maybe 80%. AI alone could perform at maybe 80%, but AI plus humans can perform at like 150%.
Yeah.
And so our whole thesis here is that every team within a company should be able to access the customer feedback that helps them achieve their goal as well as they can. The marketing team might use it to identify what benefits and compliments that people have for the product so that they can craft better messaging. The product team might use it to identify all of the gaps in the product so that they can add more features to satisfy the market there. Sales teams might use it to go figure out where all of the objections are and try to sort of fix all of that up. The customer experience teams might use it to identify all the frequently asked questions that are coming up so that they can better build macros and responses to their customer support requests. So overall, this giant amounts of qualitative data that these companies are already collecting can be applied to almost every team within the company.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you're sort of marrying this sort of AI that really deeply understands your customer feedback with your company's objectives and goals.
Yeah, that's great. Last topic I wanted to talk about is just this from the customer perspective, and I think all of us, no matter what we do in our day jobs, we're also consumers, at least by night, and we're inundated with surveys and requests for feedback. Brief tangent here, but it's timely because I just flew back home last night from a conference. My flight was delayed a couple hours. I had to deplane, and wait in the airport for 2 hours. Not the airline's fault. The airline will remain nameless. But, this morning I get a survey, completely generic survey from them saying, we hope your flight was pleasant or whatever. Well, yeah, they did a fine job and did the best they could. It was nobody's fault. Flight crew got sick or something like that. But don't send me a survey asking about my flight being pleasant or not when you have the information to know that there was an issue or something like that. Long way of getting back to the point, which is, what do brands need to, we're over surveyed. There's lots of reasons for that. It's probably the topic of a whole other podcast, let alone maybe just even an episode. But, what should brands be keeping in mind in order to get the best feedback from their customer? Because in order to get good feedback, you need to ask the right questions and at the right time and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I could probably talk forever on on survey design and triggers and all of that. But high level, here's a few things. So one, I think most surveys have way too many questions in them. And the reason we do this is because it makes it actually easier to process the data after the fact. Because most of the time, what people do is they ask a bunch of multiple choice questions. It's like, which job title do you fit under? Or if you had to choose one of these features, which one would be the one that you want us to build?
Yeah.
They organize these surveys this way because it makes it much easier to actually analyze the results. But you're optimizing for your own sort of internal processes there, not for your actual customer's perspective.
Yeah.
So my advice is actually to greatly limit the number of questions you're asking your customers. You don't want to go ask them 50 questions. You want to ask them the 3 most salient questions and allow them to type answers out in their own words. Yeah. Historically, it's been tough to do that because you have to go through and read everything, but we've got AI now that can help you do that. So that's the first bit is ask more open-ended questions and fewer multiple choice questions. So things like, how can we improve the product for you? Or what is the main benefit you receive from this product? Or what kind of user would be the best or would get the most benefit from using this product? All of those things actually are much better questions than stack rank these features or what's your biggest complaint? Choose one of the above. So that's the first step there. And then the second is context. We're to the point now where we're tracking basically everything that our customers are doing in our tools. So we should be able to understand what kinds of experiences our customers are having and tailor the trigger of these surveys to certain events. So for example, if I just rated my delivery for some for some delivery app at a 1 star, then I just had a bad experience.
Yeah.
So
right.
for that one, I would actually honestly suggest just calling up the customer and directly talking to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for say like a 2-star, a 3-star, maybe let's send a how can we improve survey. If they do a 5-star rating on it, maybe you send a what do you love about it, or who else do you think would love this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you can tailor those surveys to really just specifically hit the exact type of experience that you're hoping to get feedback about.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and this is kind of more future looking for us, but I do believe that we're about to move into a world that has much smarter surveys. So instead of just asking the big question of how can we improve this product for you, you might ask that question at first, and then the survey could be smart enough to start digging into specifics to help pull out the very specific things that you need to know about your customers.
Yeah. No, love it all, and agreed. I think the survey mindset is coming from an era where some of the stuff that you've been talking about here just didn't exist, and relying on humans to kind of parse it and stuff. So I'm excited for improvements in that area, because I mean, as a marketing and a CX consultant and advisor, there's one part of that I'm excited about, but also just as a consumer, I'm sick of getting surveys that I'm kind of annoyed because of the lack of context awareness and all that stuff, as you mentioned. No, that's great stuff. Well, one last question before we wrap up here, and you've given a lot of great advice already, but just wanted to get one piece of advice that you would have for brands that want to start using qualitative customer data more effectively. What would you recommend as maybe a place to get started?
I recommend starting with just one of those sources, right? So dig into an NPS survey that you ran, or dig into the last week's worth of qualitative data that you got from your Zendesk help desk. So just start small. Find a data set that you think could help you understand these customers better, and really dig in. Start reading through everything. If that ends up being way too much for you, say you're a brand that's big enough to have thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of support tickets per month, that's going to not be really tenable for you. So, once you kind of graduate past that, you got to start looking around for tools to help you dig in and see the forest for the trees.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Daniel Erickson, founder and CEO at Viable, for joining the show. You can learn more about Daniel and Viable by following the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkihlstrom.com. That's GregKihlstrom.com. To get a copy of my latest book, House of the Customer, visit my website, or you can find it on Amazon or other retailers. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.